we have to work together because there's something else that's out there coming our way that we will not be prepared for if we continue to spend all of our time fighting each other. I always considered myself and spoke about myself as an empath. Psionic and telepathy never entered the arena in terms of how I describe myself. And therefore, I remain slightly unstable without those two descriptive words to help me understand why I hear the way I hear, why I see things the way I see things, and so on and so forth. And so we have millions of people out there experiencing the same thing.
Welcome, everyone, to Cosmic Convergence, an experiencer-hosted podcast. Join us as we dive into the fascinating realms of extraterrestrial intelligence, consciousness, and more. Today, we are honored and joined by Atara, known as Woo Factor on TikTok and Patreon. Links are below. Atara is a lifelong experiencer who has had ongoing interactions with non-human intelligence and has been shown glimpses of future events. From 2017 to 2024, she sent numerous mails to the media outlets and government officials, warning of events that are now unfolding. With the ongoing disclosure movement revealing the existence of a shadowy control group behind political systems, Atara has dedicated herself to educating the public about these back-end systems and how they have shaped social and political movements worldwide. Atara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Glad to be
Thanks
here.
for being here.
Can you share with our listeners a little bit about your first memory interacting with non-human intelligence and when did that happen?
Absolutely. I was 4 years old, and it was my first, I think this is considered my first memory contact, where a reptilian alien would visit both my sister and I, so I was identical twin sister, and he showed up probably 3 or 4 times, had sort of to me, he had sort of a caretaking vibe to him. Additionally, I had a sense that I probably annoyed him. With the amount of times that he was in my presence, I developed a sense of him that there was what I think Daniel has been calling sort of a communion with this non-human intelligence. I didn't feel scared. With all the experiences that I've had, there wasn't fear. There was always this sense of assistance.
At church, you kind of had this realization that maybe things weren't being taught correctly, and there was a being that was behind you and kind of was interacting. And when was that? When did that happen in your life? At what age?
So that one happened at 10 years old. I'm sitting in church, as many children do on a Sunday, and the teacher was sitting up in front. The teacher was in front of the class. So I'm going to give you a visual. Children sitting around, listening to the teacher talk about or teach about Jesus on the cross. There was a being behind me. And what I did in a lot of these situations that I have, no one else is seeing what I'm seeing. I'm sure you all have had that experience too, where you sort of stepped out of time. The being is speaking with me telepathically, and there is this energy that I can feel as well, which is why I turned around and looked behind me. And so it's showing me or telling me telepathically that what is being taught about Jesus on the cross is not true. The being wasn't angry with the teacher, and that's really important to convey because the teacher has been taught too what is wrong, and so they can only teach what they know. And
Right.
so this is really key. There wasn't any animosity, any vengeance. There was no get that teacher kind of a vibe. It was just simply what's being taught is not true. And so I raised my hand and said, that's not true. And the teacher, of course, said, put your hand down and be quiet. I then went home and told my parents that what was being taught at church wasn't true and to please never ever send me back there. And my parents never sent me back, thankfully. I never went to church in a consistent way again. Um, each time my mother asked me after that, because she did try, I would hold my head and I would say something to the effect of, no, because when I think about that place, my head hurts. Now you can imagine as I got older, that began to make sense. Colonization, like we are a telepathic species. So um, me growing up, having had these experiences, I'm aware of the system overhaul and really trying to be um, nonpartisan with the language that I use because what we're going through right now is nonpartisan through and through. Does that make sense?
And where did you get your perspective on that? Was that just with how you grew up? Was it being psychically sensitive to everything around you, or how did you kind of build that worldview?
The worldview that it's nonpartisan.
Yeah.
Oh, honestly, I was very partisan. I was very partisan in the way that I talked. I had an experience during Mr. Trump's first term, and I will talk about him because I've had 6 premonitions about him. But during his first term, I was waking up from a dream, and literally, as I was getting out of bed, I'm not sure why I was getting out. I mean, I was just getting out of bed, and I heard, "You're being too partisan." And it wasn't my voice. It was a clear message to me that with all the information that I was getting, I needed to be clear that I wasn't being partisan about what was coming through me. Does that make sense? So was I partisan up until that point? Absolutely, probably, because what I was seeing was that the world was being changed in a way that would not protect people like me. So of course, I was partisan.
Right. It's not hard to not have a certain perspective when it does affect you and people that you love, and it's really hard to not hate the other side, or and this is a conversation I know that is at a time that everything's at all-time high as we're having this conversation, and that's something that I wanted to go into a little bit with. When was the first time you came across this back-end system? And I'd like you to go a little bit more into what you mean by that and what you've seen. I know that we've had many discussions about it, but just so that the listeners kind of understand what we're actually talking about on that side.
This is a very recent, since being on TikTok, theory, if you will, that I developed after watching the documentary called UFOs and Nukes. And that documentary, they talk about how aliens showed up in 1948. And I developed this narrative spiel that anyone can grab a hold of. So aliens showed up in 1948 because humans are using nuclear war. And by the late 1950s, a back end system was created. Right? And there's plenty of UFO documentaries out there that talk about this, that the president and Congress were basically sidelined. And at that same time, we had civil rights uh, fights taking place within the country at the exact same time. So what I sort of started to theorize was that back end system, which was, let's just put it over here, developed its own Army, Navy, right? So this isn't even original thought on my end. This is data that's out there about what I've termed the back end system. I'm just giving it life and saying it has been operating for a really long time, creating what I've called a secrecy dome that we all live under, right? It doesn't matter if you're on the left, doesn't matter if you're on the right. We all live under the secrecy dome, and therefore we are all affected by it. So you can have that. When I used to hear people say it's both sides, they're like, no, it's not. It's the right through and through. And it's not, it's just not. It's both sides because when you live in what I term a reality-based ecosystem, where narrative is king, then the narratives on both sides matter, right? So if the narrative on the right, which dominates right now because they have a long-term psychological warfare that they've been running, that Greer talks about since the late 1980s. That's what I picked up on when I was 10 in church. I picked up on one aspect of the psychological warfare program that was in place targeting children. Right? I was a child at the time when I saw it. And I was a kid who was sent to church without my parents. And there were a lot of kids who were doing that. So just some anyway, we don't want to go too far with that. So get me back on track here. You can see how wide it is. My theory is how big it is, and how easy it is to get lost in there. It's expansive, which is why it needs a lot of people with their own takes and their own voices and their own pieces of the puzzle. Does that make sense? So you all have your piece of the puzzle that gets plugged into here and helps right this ship. Sort of what I'm doing is I'm doing the whole overview from the top, because I've been awake since I was 4. Basically, since I was a kid, I've been awake, and just watching this whole thing unfold. And so I can see it clearly without getting too upset or too overly dramatized about it. That said, if we don't move quick enough, we will naturally need to become overly dramatized about what's going on, because more and more people are being affected by the machinations of a system that has been built on top of a very tight secrecy dome.
Do you think that that's what's needed for us to actually stop being complacent? I say us, just the people in general, because I feel like I see a lot of complacency, or people complain but not doing enough, but then being pressured so much to finally say enough so that we can actually come together and do something about it, right? That's what I think is happening. I feel like so much pressure is being added that we're getting to a point where we're going to snap, and
Yes.
I think that snap is needed personally, because otherwise it's just more of the same. We don't do anything, we just complain about it, and nothing ever changes. We need to start getting up, knocking on doors, and doing that kind of thing. I would like it to be nonviolent, however, but it's just, we're in a weird place. But I could see the pressure building.
Right. Yeah, it is building, and hopefully, the intention is to. I would think that the intention in what is called a controlled collapse, because I think that's what this is. It's one of the first things that I wrote in the emails. I asked very specifically, is this a controlled collapse? Because something's happening, and we're going we're going down. And so hopefully we can, as much as possible, control the violence, because it's a wave. When a wave hits, when a system. Let me put this in another metaphor. When a system goes through an apocalypse, which is what we're going through, an apocalypse under certain language or definitions just simply means a change. The system is going through a massive change. That change was instituted before any of us were born. I'm 55 years old. That change was instituted before we were born. So we are, in essence, riding a wave and then choosing how we want to move the ship, if you will. And so, yes, there can be violence, and there has been violence, and there is violence. We want to hopefully move past the need for violence to go through these kind of changes.
So the back end system was pretty much set up to not just keep the UFO secrecy under wraps. Then you probably got reverse engineering and everything else that's been going on behind the scenes with NHIs and stuff. And but also as a control mechanism to keep us, I hate to use the term, distracted amongst each other, and the hate amongst both sides, and people turning in their neighbors because they think that they're from, here illegally, or the whole plethora of thing, gender, sex, religion, and everything else is just there as a control mechanism to stop us from becoming aware of not being alone.
Right. That's sign language for right. If we go back to the late 1950s and just look at the political climate back then, what was happening? We had World War II, I believe, going on, and we were just coming out of that. We had what was happening over in the Middle East. There was a lot going on at the same time that aliens showed up,
right,
and created a back end system in this ecosystem. This isn't the first time that this has been done, though, because if you look at the Tower of Babel, if you look at that story, it basically says that the gods, i.e., aliens, will say frequently, because this isn't the first time, frequently do things to subvert humanity's capacity to know itself in relationship to them and just in relationship to one another. And so that back end system, again, late 1950s, has been in place, building a infrastructure where they know about the reverse engineered, where they know all about all this tech, where they know about the health benefits of the type of technology that you see on Star Trek, probably. Just psionically, I'm aware that they have all of that, and we've paid for it. So I have an expectation, and my expectation is that we will experience it in this lifetime, and that it doesn't have to be done. It doesn't have to be done violently, right? It doesn't. I have to be careful what I talk about here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But if
just
we
because
look
the
back
back end system, those guys. So when you think about Jake Barber, and who's one of the back end system guys who has come forward, so in the emails, I think this is a good thing to say. When I started writing those emails, I wrote those emails because at the time, for a solid year, no one could hear what I was saying, which was our system is going through a massive change, and we need to get we need to become tech literate. We need to do a whole lot of stuff to be prepared for what's coming, right? And I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. The pressure of the three of your minds coming towards me, it's wonderful, and I'm having a hard time staying grounded. So when I get like this, I'll just say, "Hey, someone, just get me back on track, and just put me back on track with what I was saying, and I'll slide right back in there."
Yep. So Jake Barber and how he's connected to the backend system and him coming forward.
Yes.
And the emails of you kind of laying out, hey, there's massive changes happening.
Yes. Okay. So with Jake Barber, one of the things that I noticed when I was writing the emails. So think about this: when I start writing the emails, they are purely, for the most part, downloads for 7 years. And so I was writing things where I was like, "Hey guys, I think that I'm a spy." Because of the information I'm getting. How am I getting this information? It makes no sense that I am aware of that backend system, that I can feel them, I can hear them. I know that many of them want this veil of secrecy to come down. Jake Barber is one of those guys that I probably felt.
Something connected with me. I felt like something had tuned in to me and my soul and was providing me some sense of guidance.
Right. So what started to become clear to me is that the way that we go through this matters, because we have folks on the behind the scenes who want to come forward. How do we do that? How do we set that up? I personally didn't know because I'm not in contact with anybody. But how we do it matters because their lives matter. That said, so do ours. And we're on the front end, and there's a lot of people on the front end getting their asses kicked. Valid?
Yeah.
Valid. So the large question, how do we do this in a way that we merge two systems where the men and women are big into the alpha and the beta and the and the power and the, who gets this, who gets that. It's a lot. And even as I sit here and talk about it, I can feel it. I can feel that. I can feel like this is the weight of the energy of the question at hand. How do we get from where we are right now, where Mr. Trump is escalating chaos in the ecosystem? How do we, right, get into the ecosystem, narrate and navigate through what we are currently going through? Because that is the only option. We sit on the sidelines, they will build everything, and we won't like it, and we'll spend the rest of our lives complaining.
Right.
Our only option is to be in the arena. This is why I keep saying to people: if you are if you're a politician, you get your butt in that arena. You signed up for the job. Get in there and fight. If you are a blogger or a podcaster, you better get on out there and start talking. Whatever it is that your talent is, you've got to get out there and you've got to start doing it right now. And do it in a way. I mean, if you go back, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm putting all my emails into ChatGPT. And then what I'm doing is I'm then trying to provide a map, a way out, if you will, because that's one of the things that I prophesied when I was writing all the emails. One of the first things that I said when I was writing the emails was, hey guys, and there's a plan to get us through. And this is me, literally, when I did this, remembering that everything's downloading. There's a plan to get us through. What? I don't know it. And I just wrote in an email and sent it to the media that there's a plan for us to get through. Really? And that was solidly based on an intuitive feeling. All those emails were written on intuitive feeling that no one could hear me yet. So let me send the emails to the media, create it became sort of a holding place for the emails so that they could be used later. And now when I put them in the ChatGPT, I'm stunned. I think I sent some to Daniel. Go ahead, put it into ChatGPT or whatever AI you have, and then ask it to analyze, summarize, and then ask it for action forward, what to do. And every time I put this stuff in, it gives me what to do.
So, do you have any? I know that you emailed Rachel Maddow, for instance, back in, what was it, 2016, 20?
Started in August of 2017.
2017. Do you have any examples of any of the emails right there in front of you that maybe you can read off one or two, just so the audience can know exactly what you've been sending off in general?
Absolutely. Because they tend to be quite filled with political stuff. I'm just trying to make sure I pick one that is the Arab Spring, the wave of violence that spread across the Middle East in 2015. Who instigated that? I heard unsubstantiated theories that the U.S. did it. I wrote to Rachel Maddow early in the Trump administration or during the election. I can't recall which. I wrote to assert a theory I had that someone was trying to start what could be dubbed a Western Spring. Honestly, I had only thought of the US at that point because it was not known that other Western countries were experiencing some of the same new ways of being compromised. But now we can see Russia and friends' intention is the complete destabilization of the Western alliance. Maybe the Arab Spring was a warm-up for them. Maybe the premonitional dream I had about a missile hitting the US, it was at my feet and had the colors of the flags of North Korea and Russia wrapped around it. There was a smoky red sky all around me as well, I'll talk to you guys specifically about that one because that's a specific one.
Okay.
It's one of the reasons why I saw Trump and Kim Jong-un as doing a skit during Trump's first term. See, I had this premonition 1 week before 9/11, and therefore believe that what we are seeing today and 9/11 are different events in a long-term strategy to take down the U.S. In other words, they may be connected and must be seen from that perspective to test out a theory of continuity of an attempt to slow roll destabilization. I can go on and on. Another event to look at is the Boston bombing. The older brother talked very disparagingly about our liberal media. It was said that he began planning the attack after watching the 2012 election cycle. That was a premonition that I had. I had a premonition of the Boston bombing during the 2012 election cycle. Is there a relationship? Go back and look at Putin's response to the attack. Just more thoughts. Theories always have to be validated with facts, as does anything else. So I kind of went all over the place with that one, but that's kind of the gist. I get reads about things. The Boston bombing one was probably one of the most scariest ones that I've had, because I had the premonition that there was going to be a mass shooting, and whoever it was had been heavily influenced by the news, because the news at the time, the news was cycling through my brain in a way that was just like, this doesn't make any sense. So that when the Boston bombing actually took place, I was tracking it the entire time. So I went to bed and I asked who committed this act, and I had a premonition of the two brothers before they were shown on TV, and then I drew a picture of them in their condo, and a number of other things. And then I tracked them as they chased them. I tracked them as well, psionically.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I remember that event. That was wild stuff. That was just wild stuff. One got caught where he was in the back of a boat in someone's backyard or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't think neither one of them made it. Right.
One of them is in jail.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
I mean, when things come from the ether or wherever they come from, and you get these premonitions, and they turn out to be true, it's validating, but it's kind of sad at the same time, especially when the premonitions are of bad things. I mean,
absolutely.
But it comes from somewhere, comes source, from universal consciousness, from whatever it's there. And so when we tap into those, we need to pay special attention and heed. And so I don't blame you for like emailing the media and stuff like that, which, I mean, I've had my jobs in security and stuff like that. Nothing major, nothing military or anything. But one thing that I learned that always seems to hold true is that humanity doesn't do anything about it preventively, that we're always reactionary. We never try to prevent something from happening, only until after that something bad happens. And then we end up losing a lot of, the populace ends up losing more rights as a result of that. But, if we were to take these instances of erring caution more seriously, especially again, back to what we're going through during this tumultuous time in our politics and in the world, really, we could prevent things from happening, but I hope we can eventually reach that point. And so I say just continue to reach out as you have been, and maybe it will stop falling on deaf ears. One could only hope.
I'm on a podcast right now. I think that is already happening.
Also, I had a question because I noticed, because I also agree, I don't think every NHI is positive, right? I feel like we live in a duality. There's different beings of different types all over the place, including ourselves, right?
Yes.
And we're a good reflection of the differences that can exist in the universe. So,
absolutely.
like when you were mentioning the Tower of Babel, or even when you go into like ancient history, talking about Enki and Enlil, and there's like
Yes.
this divide there, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So in terms of the beings that you are in communication with, um, is there do you think there's a divide between these beings, or they're going against each other behind the scenes? Have you ever received any information about that in terms of like positive or negative, or because the ones you communicate with seem positive, more positively aligned?
Right. And the only indication that I've had that there may be war-like energy between aliens is when I saw spaceships in Sedona in 1993, and that was just it was me waking up in the middle of the night, looking up to the sky and seeing about 15 to 20 spaceships. It was way up in the atmosphere, and they were moving around, and wiped my eyes, and then they began shooting. See, they were zipping, but then they were shooting. So now, could that have been us and the aliens going at each other? Yes. I don't have enough information to say confidently which aliens are against each other.
Sure.
I just don't have enough. My experience up till now has been the reptilians, Nordic, uh, very handsome Nordic guy who I asked who's helping Trump. Guess what's flashed in my head? Nordic alien, very
Vertical.
handsome. Yes, Nordic alien or tall white, one of the two. So when I so when so uh, Gray's reptilian, Nordic, and then something else. I haven't ever interacted with them in a way where I saw conflict between one and another.
Hmm.
I just haven't had that experience yet. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Now, that said, are there aliens out there who will use you and who will influence you against your better nature? Absolutely. How do we know that? It's in the Bible, right there with Adam and Eve in the garden, where they were subverted. Humans have been subverted by our older alien friends since our inception. So it's kind of like we're the runts on the scene. I mean, that's just like
Yeah.
you sort of have to look at it from a military standpoint if you want to survive,
Yeah.
right?
And
So if we're the runts in an ecosystem where there are aliens who are also telepathic, and we're a telepathic species where that's been um, held down from us or kept from us, we are easily influenced then.
yeah.
And so then you can understand why a lot of humans have been doing some of the things that they're doing,
Right.
or why a political party could change so radically. From my standpoint, there's just something else there
Mhm.
that has to be able to explain that. And to me, that involves the backend system where they're trying to keep data from us. But because we know it, we can make sense of it, and then we can share it and help other people stabilize in the real reality. And the real reality, we're not alone, period.
Right.
Never have been. And we are telepathic. And being telepathic, we must put in place structures, programs, something that protects our brains. That is something that I wrote in the emails so often that I'm stunned how often that I wrote it. And it was channeled information, and I did not know we were a telepathic species at the time. I always considered myself and spoke about myself as an empath. Psionic and telepathy never entered the arena in terms of how I describe myself. And therefore, I remain slightly unstable without those two descriptive words to help me understand why I hear the way I hear, why I see things the way I see things, so on and so forth. And so we have millions of people out there experiencing the same thing.
Right.
They cannot stabilize because the way that we're narrating to them about reality will never connect. You can
Yeah.
describe me as an empath from the age of 4 till now, and it never explained my world until I met Daniel. Ever. My world, or until I started listening to the telepathy tapes,
Right.
described my world like nothing I've ever experienced. Why? Because those guys, our nonverbal autistic family, they exist in a different kind of back-end system, what I call the root system, right? The root system where you don't need the voice, you don't need all the senses that we have and need out here.
Mhm.
So that world is the world that I exist in as well, which is why I can hear on the scale that I can hear, and probably why Daniel can hear on the scale that he can hear. Our job going forward is to reintroduce humanity to itself as a telepathic species who can communicate, taking us back to our original language, which is telepathy.
Right. And it's interesting too, because that's the main form of communication when you listen to people who have near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, that it's all mind to mind or soul to soul, that there's no need for using like verbal language. And there's no mistakes whenever you're communicating that way, because you know what the
Right.
other means inherently. There's no room for misunderstanding, which I think once we remember fully as a species that we're capable of doing that, it's going to be a more dominating form of communication. And we won't even
Yes.
need cell phones and things like that. But yeah.
Exactly. You listen, you nailed it, because that is exactly what I experienced in 1993 in Sedona. I didn't need a phone. Literally, I would be at one location and I would hear that someone else was the person I was going to go find was on their way to me. So I would just hear a word, stay. They're coming to you. I sat, I stayed, boom, there was my friend who I was going to go find. And so I had numerous experiences like that.
And quick question.
Go ahead.
When you have communication, because I know there's different forms, is it kind of like you auditory hear a voice? Is it more like it's in your mind? Or like, for example, in the mediumship stuff, like whenever I got anything, it's sometimes I'll get an image of the person in my mind.
Sure.
Lips are not moving, and there's just more of a knowing than them actually saying, hey, Chris, by the way, this, that, and this. It's more like I know, or feel is a better word. I feel what they mean, if that makes sense.
I would say all the above, but mainly I'm auditory. I literally hear verbally exactly what is being said, and or
Gotcha.
I see it, or I'm in it. So I could be in two different places at once.
That makes sense. They call that a clair, I think, like a clair audience. You can actually hear all the
clair audience.
Yeah. I've only had one experience like that where I verbally heard somebody like calling my name, and that was weird. But that was the one time.
Yeah, hang out. Once you start hanging out with people, you will literally, the memory will start to kick back on. I took a class with James Van Prague back in 2012. Had a couple of ladies who were like, "So, can you hear those people over there?" We were at a restaurant, and I was like, "No, that's weird." I was like, "You guys are weird that you want to be able to hear people like that," because I wasn't hearing like that at the time, or I didn't know that I could hear. And literally, probably within about a week, bam, it opened up for me, and I started hearing clearly, or just paying more attention to the fact that I was hearing things. I bet you hear more than you know.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I tell the guys a lot of the weird stuff that happens with me, and even Daniel like reaching out to me, and we've mentioned it on the show before, and reaching out in the middle of the night, 3 a.m, because I had some kind of an experience, and he just texted me at like 3, is like, "Hey, you all right?" And I was like, "What the?" 'Cause I was having like a sleep paralysis event of some kind happening.
Did anyone experience anything since the last time we talked? Because I woke up. So we talked on a Wednesday, I think it was.
Last time
by Friday.
It was so last time we talked was last Sunday, wasn't it?
Was it last Sunday? Well, whenever we talked, within 3 days, I woke up screaming the word help. My wife said, I have never said anything so clear from a dream, because I often talk. I can talk coming out of dreams and whatnot, but I would literally yell, help. And it wasn't like I was scared. It was, I can't even describe it, but I did scream help. And then someone said that they hated me. And I was like, no, you don't. Literally, I was like, no, you don't. You're just jealous. Because that's what I
Yeah.
felt. I literally heard the words, I hate you. And I went, oh, you poor person.
Right.
Oh, honey, I love you back. Because if you
Mm.
feel that,
Yeah.
you don't know me at all.
Right.
Not even remotely. Yeah.
Okay,
I've
I'm
had
intrigued.
I've had experiences like that with folks who were white nationalists, where someone was like, yeah, this person's going to hate you. And I'd say, they don't know me. I can't even entertain the notion that they're going to hate me, because they don't know me to hate me. Once they know me and they want to hate me, then okay. But I'm not going to have the conversation about someone hating me. This is, again, back in 1993, a very specific situation. I was going to be meeting a white nationalist, someone who had changed their life. And everyone in the community kept saying, don't meet that person, don't meet that person, don't meet that person. And literally, the Holy Spirit dropped down into my body and just said, you guys need to stop. This person has changed their life. I'm going to go meet them, because something is telling me to go meet them. They've changed. You guys won't let them change at all. You keep telling the same story about who he was back when he was programmed.
Mhm.
Big thing that we need to realize is the secrecy dome gives us narratives about ourselves that just aren't true.
Mhm.
And then we create these networked narratives about ourselves and each other that, again, they're just not based in reality at all. A lot of what we're living right now is not real.
Speaking of not living in reality, and speaking about narratives, and speaking about all of this stuff, Donald J. Trump. Come on, open up, girl. What is Donald J. Trump? Does he breathe oxygen like everybody else? But really, what is he doing? What is, because I know you have a lot to say about him. So I've been kind of chomping at the bit over here, just waiting for the perfect opportunity. So I'm just going to leave it as an open-ended question when it comes to narrative, when it comes to control, when it comes to all this stuff, and what we have going on politically and societal in this country right now and around the world again, because like Italy just pulled out of the Ukraine thing now, and they're like, so you have certain other countries that are kind of aligning with this strange shift that the United States is going into now with DJT, right? And now they want to put up some syndrome, the Donald J. Trump syndrome, of people that are like negatively affected by him even opening his mouth, but yet they're not giving it to the same people that practically worship him. So what's Donald J. Trump's, what does he mean to you, as far as not personally, but as an individual, and what he's going through right now, what he's doing?
So here's what I can say. I will say that Donald Trump, to me, because of the six plus premonitions that I had with him, he's like a trickster or a roto-rooter, if you will. This is the way that I saw him during the first term, right? He's a roto-rooter, and if we meet him head on, back then, without him building momentum and becoming a big boss, right? If you played RPG games and video games, you got a tiny boss in the beginning, right? At the end, the boss is big, and you need and along the way, you've also built up your own strength and learned new things, right? So that you can fight this big boss. That's literally how I began viewing this, in that, okay, so we have now let him grow. But the way that I viewed him in real time, because that's how I was watching the coup take place, the system change take place in real time. I'm trying to make sure I stay true to, because we're trying, listen, we're trying to get through this, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm trying not to poke the ecosystem. So when Trump first came on the scene, and I had the waking premonition that a coup and treason was taking place, and I began having premonition after premonition in January, February. I understood that that there was a disinformation, that everyone was being influenced by something. So by February of 2016, I was like, oh my God, everyone's being influenced by something. I can't be on social media anymore. I'm arguing with people and everyone's arguing with each other. So by March, I understood that Hillary would lose. I understood that Bernie Sanders was going to be taken down by, I could feel it, billionaires, the same people he's fighting today. By April, May, I understood that I didn't understand what was going on, and it was getting too big for me to handle. And so I asked directly, what is Trump's role in the ecosystem? And literally, this is what I heard. He's a mole. What does a mole do? So I said, okay, that gives me a framework to work with and to view his behavior through. Because a lot of people in the spiritual community that I talked to kept saying, he's like a change agent. He's here to do something. How does a mole act within any system? They operate for one person, themselves, right? So that told me that he is also influenceable. Something that the Democrats need to start to take into consideration. We live in an ecosystem where influence and narration and storytelling is paramount, which is the arena that Trump lives in. He lives in the arena of narration. So that's where we have to grow. And my 7 years worth of emails, I mean, like that's okay, that's the plan. So so by the time the 2016 election rolled around, keeping in mind that in May, remember that I said I understood that Hillary Clinton was going to lose. And here's what I said. I said, oh my God, okay, because I knew we were headed somewhere, just as a collective. I said, okay, we must need to take a side quest or take a side trip, because what Trump is going to do is he's going to churn up all of this stuff. We, though, have to meet it. We didn't meet it. That's just the bottom line. And so he continued to grow. And he continued to grow. The problem isn't the right. The problem is those of us who live under a secrecy dome and haven't known it. We haven't known the things that have been influencing those who've been fighting for democracy. Does that make sense? So if those who've been fighting for democracy, whether they're black, white, gay, it doesn't matter. If you don't understand that there is a secrecy dome and there are other hidden forces that can take you out, then you're taken out and you're like, what the heck happened? And then you are directing your anger or your frustration at the wrong people who can never do anything about it, ever. Because the back end system is the one that's attacking and driving the wedges between all of us. I'll remind you, who did I grow up with as my best friends? Little white boys. So who am I here? Who am I here to help and work with? Well, not just little white boys, but just little boys, okay? So who am I here to help, to assist, to help us get a new narrative going forward? My understanding is that I'm going to be working with those individuals who are intelligence driven, who are system driven, who understand the big picture, that it's going to take all of us. Back end system, front end system. there's literally no option. And whoever it is that whoever it is that talks to me and downloads, I just call them they. The big message has been, we have to work together because there's something else that's out there coming our way that we will not be prepared for if we continue to spend all of our time fighting each other. And I've seen people on TikTok, which is the only place that I've seen this, but there were some videos of folks just alluding to something else coming. So a force that does a couple things, that takes a planet's men and uses them primarily for war, that's a problem. Massive problem, right? Men need to take that back. Why? Because there's a force using you, generally speaking, against your will. So to interface with it, you got to get a new narrative about who you are and what you're about, and what you will allow it to do to you, what you will allow it to narrate into your mind about who you are in relationship to the women and children in your life. Because that's the way they're doing it. That's their way in. And if you go back and look at all of the political commentary out there, specifically on the right, you will see a almost feverish pitched energy about dominating the ecosystem. It doesn't make any sense unless they're being driven by something that they're scared of. There's a lot of fear on that side, a lot of fear. Just sitting here speaking about it, I can feel it. And it isn't the women that are scared, it's the men. It is the men. So if the men on the right are scared, God bless them, genuinely, God bless them, then what I'm trying to say here is that our work is, we got to move back a little bit, reassess, and then move forward, because this kind of fear makes men narrate the way they are on the right. They narrate out of fear, and then women, children, and everything else pays the price. Additionally, men never reach their fulfillment, that peak, that when you get in the zone on anything. Well, think about being on the zone about being a man, what that would feel like. I wrote in the emails, I said, I know aliens. I know men, male aliens that are white. And I know they wish the men on Earth would wake up. Because who and what y'all can be? Listen, yes, I'm gay, but men, y'all have something that we need. You do. You just do. You're essential. You are essential to where we're going. And so we need you to wake up. We absolutely and unequivocally need you to wake up and take a look at the narratives that they're trying to sell us.
So we're talking about the wanting to rebuild the narrative to be able to move forward through this time period of uncertainty, that there are different control groups, and mainly the human control group that is trying to rewrite everything, kind of flip this whole system in their favor, would not benefit majority of us. What is the future that you saw? Because I would like listeners to know kind of what you saw, that what was happening with Earth once we do get through it. So just for a future anchor point of kind of what it could look like.
Okay, so, and this is the premonition that drives me. So, and this premonition also had during Trump's term, and the premonitions run in sequence as well. So I anticipate that this one will come true too at some point. I was on a space station. It was spectacularly built. I was looking down on Earth. My mind, remember what I spoke about my mind earlier? My mind was at peace. and being telepathic, my mind at peace in association to Earth while looking down on Earth told me Earth knew itself. Earth inhabitants knew themselves in relationship to everything else. I looked to my right, and there was a wormhole, and there was space commerce going on because there were cars. What do you call it? So you're driving on the highway, and a truck drives by with a thing of cars on it. Imagine that in space, though, with two or three cars, you can see from the back, and then, I mean, massive. So that to me told me a couple things. One, that's an economy. What kind of economy is that? A space economy where we've got Earth cars going to another world. Wild, right? So that premonition alone could be unpacked even more, because premonitions are dimensional information. They carry so much information, it's insane. It is never one read. It's always multiple reads from multiple angles.
They stack the information. Yeah.
And so that's where, to me, where we're headed, and the work we do now is what gets us there. And so in order to see something built that was so harmoniously beautiful, then we just have to backtrack and think, what work do we have to do to get there, where we are once again telepathically communicating responsibly with our talents and whatnot.
So are you still actively sending out emails trying to bring people, especially out in the media, attention to what is going on, or do you find that they're so surrounded by the back end noise, if you will, that it's just what you're saying is on deaf ears, and so you've tried to put it into TikTok and other social medias like showing up with us today?
I just sent an email, first one in a very long time, to the Rachel Maddow Show, and I took the first 2 or 3 emails, and I put it through ChatGPT to see, well, what did I produce? Did I produce anything that could or would be helpful? And I was stunned. So I sent another email. So I sent that. I put that together and I sent that, and then I put together. I write Trump all the time. I put together a piece because I'm African American, gay, and whatnot. My account has been targeted as anti-Semitic. So I went through the emails, put them in the ChatGPT, and I asked a very specific question: is my material or narrative anti-Semitic? Because I want to just nip that in the bud. I don't want to have to deal with it anymore at all. So I put that in there, and it spit off that information. I took that and I sent it to Trump for the purpose of listen, come for me.
Right.
I've got 7 years worth of emails. I would love to get out there.
Sure.
Come on, put me in jail. No, don't do
Call the
that.
bluff. Call the bluff.
But you get what I'm saying. I've got 7 years worth of emails that are forecasts from his first term to the Biden term to his current term. It has been very important to me to make sure that I write him to let him know that we're here.
Yep.
We see you clearly. We see what you're doing. And we're going to mimic in a way a lot of what he's doing to take our country back and to assist in the narrative, if that makes any sense. I'm not about us getting out of the ecosystem. We cannot leave the ecosystem because that is exactly what they want. We stay, we interface, and we build our very, very strong narrative, therefore assisting in righting this ship.
Right. Sounds good. And just keep doing it, just keep doing it. Thank you.
Will do. Yeah, and if you all ever have anything that you want said to him, you just send it to me. It can't
Oh,
be.
yeah.
And I always say it can't.
That's
be
why I don't do it.
On that one.
It can't be. It can't be. It can't be verbally abusive or anything like that. You can't go after him.
Yeah, but you know what a
Because
bully
he won't,
does? A
because
bully
remember, he's
backs
a mole. Remember, he's a
down
mole.
every time. Yeah,
Say
he's
that
a
again?
mole. A
Yeah,
bully
he's a
backs
mole.
down every time when you give it
Yes.
back to him. Every
Yes.
stinking time. They
And what
talk
else
the
do they
talk,
do?
but they can't walk the walk. They go
Exactly.
and cry to
And
mommy.
go ahead. Yeah.
No, they go and cry to. I don't know why I'm like it. They go and cry to mommy. That's what they do, and then they try to make life hell for everybody else. But that's my rant. But no, I mean, I love the offer. If I ever think about being toned down enough to where I can have neutrality, I will send you any questions your way. But I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Don't worry, Atara. I'll have John send it to me, and then I'll scrub through it, and then I'll.
I think
Yeah, it's going to be
so.
like one word. It's going to be the, and that's all it's going to be.
And I don't have any more questions, but it's just more of a statement. Just the other day with Josie, it just popped in my head to do this. I was talking to ChatGPT and I said, we're going to pretend here. Okay, we're going to hypothetical, so it would actually answer my questions. Hypothetically, we're going to play role play here, and I'm going to be, standard citizen person on the street, and you're going to be the leaders or whoever is responsible for the back end system. I was trying to use different words or
Yeah.
phrases for whoever it could be possibly. I was like, you fill in the gaps, you know who I'm talking about.
Right.
And I asked it, and we were both just asking it questions as to why they were doing this, all this other stuff. And pretty much a lot of what you were talking about was coming out from ChatGPT. Control and fear and all this other egotistical stuff that was coming out also. But it's just very interesting. So if anyone's interested, you can do that. You can ask ChatGPT to pretend to be somebody and have that conversation, which is very interesting.
That is very interesting. People can find me on TikTok, woo_factor. You can find me also on Patreon, also woo_factor. Those are the two main places that I'm at.
Okay. Awesome. And we'll be able to put that on the screen too. I'll show all that. And then, yeah. And again, keep up the good work. It's been all amazing. And I am so glad that we were able to cross paths. Thank you so much for putting out your work and just, having the skin in the game to be able to keep pressing and having that vision for what we all want is to get through this tumultuous time in the world and continue to grow as a species and also understand the real reality that is that we're coming up on of understanding is versus the reality that's been fed to us.
Thank you. Genuinely, thank you. I have been
Thank you.
waiting for this for a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys. Like, subscribe, share, notifications, ding, ding, all that other stuff that, again, social media forces upon us in order to continue to follow the content creators that we like. TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, all that jazz. And we'll see you next time on Cosmic Convergence. Bad monkey.